I have great pleasure in opening a panel discussion on a contemporary, trendy, and significant topic like impact of new medical devices regulation 2023 and its influence on the availability, cost, quality. So I extend a very warm welcome to the esteemed panel of business leaders and practitioners and the participants connected through the webinar. We have on the panel Dr. Sujit, who should be joining soon, and he's CEO of Hiranandani Hospital, Mr. Gautam Khanna, CEO, PD Hinduja and Hospital and MRC, Commander Navneet Bali, Senior Vice President and Group Head, Advocacy and Strategy Relations, Narayana Hospital, and Mr. A. Vijayarajan, Founder and CTO, InnAccel Technologies, and myself, Arup, former Executive Director, Indian Oil Corporation, shall be moderating the session. In interest of all the attendees, I think it will be appropriate if we take a sneak peek at what this new medical devices regulation, which has come up recently, is influencing the medtech fraternity in general. So we will just take a round robin and just have a bird's eye view of what are the key features, what are the key takeaways, and then I will invite the panelists one by one on a more intense discussion, more deep dive into areas which will be kind of emerging as a matter of common interest. So I will invite, let me start with Mr. Gautam Khanna, CEO, PD Hinduja. That what is your take on this new medical devices regulation 2023? What are the key takeaways, the broad overview, just a bird's eye view, so that we can take up a more intense discussion later? Mr. Khanna.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Sinha, and thank you to all my fellow panelists. I'm looking forward to a good discussion. So, before we get into the impressions of the new bill, we need to understand why it is needed. So if you look at the history, we've had Drugs and Cosmetics Act, which was 1940, which was essentially developed for drugs. And over a period of time, many of the medical devices have come up and they are being used in the hospitals and clinics and nursing homes by individual doctors in a group setting. And what has happened is that our regulatory system was not equipped to understand that category. So it was dealing with the medical devices like a drug. However, there is a difference between the drug and a medical devices. So there was a very important need for medical devices bill to come into the country because it needs separate regulation. There are separate ways of approvals, there are trials, and the liabilities are different, and so on and on. So that's the need of the hour. And I have to say this, that government is taking a step in the right direction by bringing a device bill, and hopefully it will streamline the regulatory process in terms of approval for medical devices. And one thing we have to understand is that currently in India, around 70 to 80% of the medical devices are imported. So now, if we want to focus on what we say as affordable healthcare for the Indian masses, we need to figure out a way of reducing the cost of these devices. And if the cost of these devices is to be, these have to be manufactured in India, it needs a separate regulation. It needs lots of other things, which we will delve into a little later. So that is the reason why regulatory is important. The thing which I need to just caution against, because I have not seen the details of the bill till it is passed in the parliament, we will not know. But from what we have heard is that it is going to help in building the R&D ecosystem, help in facilitating skilled manpower, develop an ecosystem, it'll invite investments and so on. However, I think they've also heard that the penalties are for people who are manufacturing and who are selling it are going to be quite tough. It will be criminal liability, etc., etc. So I think once we know that, we need to be clear on, and I'm hoping that the government authorities will look at the difference between a drug and a device. I mean, because devices are different category, grade 1, 2, 3. I mean, there are some devices which will not even go into the skin. For example, if it is a stethoscope, it is a device, but it has to be regulated. But if a stethoscope does not function versus a drug which is given to a patient as ingested, the criminal liability cannot be the same. So those kind of things one has to think about. The other thing we have to think about is that if whatever system we do, it needs to give access to the Indian entrepreneurs for capital and help in development of local manufacturing, so that we can reduce the cost of devices for our use. So let me just stop here, Mr. Sinha, because I think we can hear from the other panelists, and then we can go into detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khanna. That was brilliant. In fact, if you really see the points that have been brought out by Mr. Khanna, it is, the one from a medtech consumer point of view, and also he has shown the concern that whether there is the equanimity in all aspects in terms of acceptance or in terms of alliances. Now, I think next I would also like to hear from Mr. Vijayarajan, being a person who has had exposure in the executive position, and later on also being, industrial, himself being a founder and CTO of InnAccel, to give his point of view, because then we will get, to know the other side of the coin as well. Yes, Mr. Vijayarajan.
So good evening, everybody. Let me use this opportunity to give the overview from the developer perspective or a manufacturer perspective. Let's say I'm going to be selling a device imported, so it needs a license. So the imported devices could be coming from a country where it has been regulated and approved. So we just need to have additional license mechanism by Indian authorities. The second is actually, let's say a multinational company is already manufacturing a device in their country, it is approved by their country, they've decided to come and manufacture in India. So they go through a different route to get an approval. That's more for the manufacturing process, not for the design. Now we have a third category of people who are developing or designing products in India and manufacturing. So they have to prove that their device is safe and they are following a manufacturing process that will give a consistent result and consistently safe to use. So fundamentally, the regulations is towards creating a safe product. That is one. The second is more an important aspect of is after delivering the device, how it is performing in the field. Just like what we do in the drug, phase 4 trials and stuff, equivalent to that, you keep monitoring the performance. Post-to-market surveillance is the most important one. And based on that, manufacturers take a decision whether it's necessary to do some correction, whether we want to recall it. So all those activities should be done. Now, having said that, general concern is regulation means a pain. But I'll tell you based on my experience, the regulation helps the innovator. Because at the end of the day, every innovator wants to develop a product which is safe to use. And the regulator gives a framework for you to deliver a safe product. So if you do not deliver a safe product and you have a problem of post-market issues, all those can be avoided. So I believe and personally experience that regulation is a friend for the innovator. That's number one. Number two is people talk about a cost. So I divide this into two aspects. One is compliance to regulation. Other one is getting a certification. compliance to regulation, it should be part and parcel, it should be basic hygiene, because you want to develop a safe product. So you comply with the regulatory requirements. Certification is another angle where definitely we have expenses and we have a time. So those need to be taken care. Now the last one, after that I give it to the other panels. Now we are seeing a lot of new age products, okay, enabled by AI, ML, language models and stuff. So these are the places where, how do I assure safety? So this is actually both the innovator and the regulator need to work together so that we deliver a safe product. At the end of the day, people like Gautam, Khanna and Navneet Bali who are delivering care, and people like us who are delivering the technology, end of the day, we are responsible for delivering a safe care to our patients. And I believe that regulation really helps. I'll stop here. So now you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. In fact, it was music to hear to hear that regulator is a friend from somebody who is a medtech provider. That augurs well for the segment. Dr. Sujit Chatterjee, welcome. It's great to have you on the panel. And
thank you very much. I apologize for being a little late, but I didn't get the link.
No worries. We were just taking an overview and of what the new regulation is, and Mr. Khanna has just elaborated first the need as to why was it required in the first place before we take a look at what are the key features. And of course, thereafter, Mr. Rajan has given his point of view as a medtech provider, and he says that the certification, the regulation, all that is good. In fact, that brings in more, kind of due diligence in the system. And only he has expressed a little concern about the certification. Then we will deep dive into that in the next round. So, so what we will do is next, Commander Bali, you have heard them, both sides of the coin. You've seen just now, and of course you have that grand experience in terms of the coordination that has to be done, because you are somebody who is an advocacy and strategy relations expert. So I can well understand that how you are into looking at both the policy makers' point of view, the medtech consumers' point of view, and now the medtech provider point of view. So what is your take on the subject? You have to unmute yourself. Mr. Bali.
Yeah. Thank you very much at the outset. Thanks, James, for having invited me. And thank you, Mr. Arup, for setting the ball rolling on this panel. As it's becoming quite evident that everything which revolves around Indian healthcare is being seen in its entirety now. 1.4 billion of us, which right now, I mean, we are the most populous nation in the world, and everything is being done right now to look at what is the cost of providing healthcare to our public, with the 1.3% of GDP being allocated to healthcare and a very small tax to GDP ratio. Universal health coverage seems to be far-flung. So now look at this policy, which, as Gautam was also talking about, that we need to go into the fine print. But India has 1.5% of the global medtech market today, and approximately 8% of the global R&D in medtech, right now, workforce were in India. This policy envisions a total 10 to 12% share in the expanding global market over the next 25 years. And to throw some figures, to take it from around $11 billion today to around $50 billion US dollars by around 2030. So it's a grand vision. And as you rightly said, let me connect it to what me and Gautam and Dr. Sujit does day to day in our hospitals. Just to give you two small examples of a linear accelerator and a robotic arm, which are being currently manufactured. They've started looking at it in India. The cost of these devices, which are being imported right now, and from what it will be made in India, let us say, and this policy sort of pushes R&D. It supports research. It supports empowering your technical manpower. It supports all enterprises which are going to be involved into everything that needs to be done, whether we want to make it in India or we make innovative products in the country, or we import them and under license manufacture it here, and it covers the entire plethora of the entire medtech space. I think the entire result is going to be that overall we bring down the cost of healthcare on the common patient. And so unless any policy which we are looking, especially at healthcare, gives these 2-3 results. Number one, as rightly pointed out, we need to have safe medical devices. We need to have medical devices which are very effective. We need to have medical devices which are much better than what we have seen till now. And we need to have medical devices which are extremely safe, and whichever global standards we look at, I think it would fail. And this policy specifically addresses most of the issues that what we have seen till now. And it's a great step in the right direction. It not only deep dives into this huge market which exists, and slowly we start making for the world, and as we progress further, and India becomes a global hub for many of these things that right now we are not doing. I think it's a wonderful decision and a decision in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander Bali. That was excellent. Now, Dr. Sujit, you have this advantage of actually being a user as a professional doctor, and thereafter also as an administrator and executive in being a procurer. Now, what is your take on this new MDR?
Well, I think it's an excellent idea as far as the country is concerned. It's a great idea that we are going to be manufacturing things in our country and it's going to be used in the country. But you have to weigh the supply and the demand. While you are manufacturing, you actually have to understand that the people have to buy it. So therefore, you have to have, as has been very rightly pointed out by Mr. Vijayarajan, is that you have to have quality, and you have to have people who monitor the quality, and you have to have a dedicated council like the Quality Council of India who will give a certification. Now you have the CE mark, you have the FDA approval. Now, are we going to be able to match those standards and get the demand? While you think that you're going to supply, who's going to buy? So before you start setting up huge manufacturing units and think in terms of manufacturing very sophisticated equipment, please understand that people need to buy it. So this is where the government also has to have a very far-reaching policy as far as healthcare is concerned. So today we are the youngest nation in the world with an average age of 35 to 40 years. 20 years down the line, we will be one of the oldest nations, and we will have a huge burden to carry. The government has to invest heavily in healthcare. So therefore, if you're really wanting to manufacture, please understand that while your supply may be excellent, nobody would buy it. For example, let me just take a leaf out of the defense sector. We are yet struggling for our indigenous fighter. We are yet struggling for a main battle tank. So therefore, even if we procure it, do the armed forces need it in the quantities that we're going to manufacture it? And if so, are we going to be able to stand with the competitions of Rafales of the world and so on and so forth? So similarly, if you have a CT scan machine, you have a high-tech MRI machine, and you are cost at 2x the price, who's going to purchase it? So therefore, I think this has to be a visionary statement by the government, on policies. So therefore, the policy has to be very clear. First of all, you need to understand before you start supplying, will there be a demand? I think that's a fundamental thing as far as I'm concerned. I'm very, very happy to understand that, yes, India is going to be pushing forward with manufacturing. But at the same time, I think India also has to realize that the equipment, as you're saying, and as everyone has said so far, is that the equipment has to be sensitive and be very specific if you're going to really win the trust of the medical fraternity. Robotics, etc., which are coming into the market, there are hidden difficulties. And the difficulties are in the robotic arm. The robotic arm is not as long-lasting as the ones which are from overseas. So
Right.
therefore, in the long run, while the manufacturing is cheap, will it be cost effective?
Yeah.
So therefore, I think this is something that the government really needs to be very carefully before we plunge into huge sector manufacture and then realize that there's no demand.
Very correct. In fact, Dr. Sujit, this particular perspective gives me the cue for the next query that I have in mind. That while we are talking about Indianization and the additional research expenditure, matching of the global quality, and making it on the same breath, we are wanting the affordability. So again, the enigma of chicken or the egg, which one first? So whether the demand should get created for the manufacturing or the manufacturing should be held to the demand, all these queries come very much when an emerging segment of the economy is promising and making news. On this particular aspect, whether these are contradictory in terms of the trading margin capping and such regulations, and on top of that, the very ambitious growth plan. Mr. Khanna, would you like to just delve on what is this particular quandary on which all of us are wanting some clarification?
Mr. Sinha, very relevant point, and I think what Dr. Chatterjee and Commander Bali and Mr. Vijayarajan have mentioned. One thing is there is no substitute for quality. We should not think that we are going to make it in India and because it will be cheap, I will compromise on the quality. I have to tell you this, the healthcare sector, and there are three of us who are representing the services side, the provider side. Healthcare sector is a very conservative space. It will not go because you cannot take chance with the patient's life. So just because it is cheap, just because it is made in India, does not mean that it will be used. It will be used if there is enough evidence and quality data to support it. It's about its efficacy, if there are certifications. So, and if there has been enormous trial. So there is a lot of ecosystem which needs to back the developmental of medical devices. That ecosystem needs to help in the trials, in the studies. I mean, for example, if I am taking a product which has, let's say, 9,000 installations outside the country, and somebody comes and says, I have 2, it is difficult for me to put that in the patient's body because I cannot take a chance on that. So that's an example. The other thing is, can the government's policy, which government is talking about about R&D and innovation, can government and the government institutions help the local manufacturers develop this data and build this quality certification? And for example, if an AIMS or any other institution has tested and published data, then it gives confidence to the other manufacturers. So that is one aspect. The second aspect of this is that, like, most of the products which we use today and what we are seeing which is coming out, the products which are coming out in the market today are not replacing the current products. So I am saying that they are not making them cheaper, better, faster. They are not. They are newer technologies. They are giving newer solutions. So either they are replacing the whole thing or it is a brand new solution. So for hospitals and doctors and clinics, it is very difficult to reduce their cost and understand that how is this innovation and the medical device is helping me. Because if I am using the same monitors and the same MRI and the same CT for which the cost keeps going up every year, how is this helping me? So that's one example about that.
Sure.
The second thing I want to just mention, which Dr. Chatterjee mentioned, and I think it's a very relevant point. We are in a capitalist world. The supply will follow wherever there is demand. Manufacturing will follow. If the multinationals have not set up plants in India, but they have set up plants in other parts of Asia or Europe, it is because there is captive demand. If there is not enough demand in India, difficult to attract investment from there. So the solution to that is that the Indian manufacturers need to be thinking about supplying to the world, because Indian demand is not going to take care of their manufacturing. So they need to take care that if they develop the quality product with the certification, with the tests, it has to cater to the global demand. Then they will be able to manufacture, they'll get the cost low, and even Indians will use it. So I think it's a little long way of doing it. It's not going to happen today, but let me stop at that. Thank you.
That's brilliant. So that's a new perspective again. Mr. Vijayarajan, did you take that particular comment which says that supply to the world? In other words, being part of the global value chain, seems to be the first step before you develop confidence in the production to spur up. Now, do you think then the regulators and stakeholders, they need to sit on the same table before a particular regulation is formulated?
Yeah, great. I think Gautam Khanna has really articulated the problem. I'm going to see this slightly in a different perspective. In the developed world, today, healthcare is delivered either by the government or by insurance. So if there is a procedure, somebody will pay for it, not from the out of pocket. There is no incentive for the technology providers to come out with a cost-effective solution. I will rather add 2 additional features and increase the reimbursement by another 25%. I will never look at saying that, okay, let me optimize this and then make it available for a lower cost, because I don't have any incentive to do that. So Indian innovators need to look at that and see that this market is an out-of-pocket market. How can I come with a more cost-effective solution, taking care of all the quality and safety? So that is one. So it is not replacing or the existing high-end solution, or looking at solutions which is needed. The second one is we have some unique problems in India, which outside countries are not going to be focusing on it. One of the examples which I always give is about 45% of our birth happens outside of a traditional setting, where if there is a problem, the problem can be taken care. Today, what happens here is probably the kid has to be transported about 20 kilometers. So during this time, I need to provide a certain level of support. That type of solutions, unique for India, needs to be developed by our innovators. Now, to answer your question, so these products which are getting developed, looking at these 2 aspects of it, need to be safe, and meeting the global standard. So that's where the regulator really comes into picture, saying that set the stage, follow these norms, follow these standards, do this development in a particular way, do this testing, collect this clinical data, and then put it in the market. So definitely they need to work together. Now, having said that, so win local, go global. So any solution what we create today definitely be useful for a global. Globally, people are struggling with the cost. One is the ecosystem doesn't give incentive for people to reduce the cost. So definitely there is an opportunity to play globally. So these standards and this adherence to standards definitely is going to meet our requirement, also global requirements.
Okay, so what you are saying, what is good for the world will kind of, through this kind of stringent compliances administered, will also be domestically acceptable, and vice versa too. I think just a supplementary to that would be that do you think that the particular aspects of ease of doing business to meet this dual objective that you just mentioned is provided for in the MDR? Again, Mr. Rajan, if you could just talk on that for a little while more.
Yeah, so ease of doing business, from whose perspective you look at it?
From the provider's point of view.
Care provider's perspective.
Yeah.
Correct? From the doctor's perspective. Okay. I'll tell you today, do they have a confidence on India developed product without a stringent regulatory in place? Okay, so they have to depend on imported product. So probably about 30% of the cost of setting up a hospital goes with the medical devices. Close to 15 to 18% in delivering care is because of the cost of the medical devices. Now, if they want to reduce it and buy a solution developed in India, they don't have a confidence on that. If you look at from that perspective, doing ease of doing business, I believe that this regulation is helpful, creating a level playing field. And I don't need to worry about, I'm buying from an Indian vendor. Is it really safe? Yeah. So that somebody actually gives me a certificate saying that, yeah, we have reviewed all these things. Looks like it is safe.
Yeah, as I can see from safety within inverted commas is one thing you have underlined almost in all the observations that you made, Mr. Vijayarajan, and Mr. Khanna also mentioned that it is a very conservative world, and we cannot play with the health of individuals, and safety, quality, compliance is foremost. So now we will slightly switch gear. I think we have talked enough on the challenges and the opportunities and whatever threats. And now, Dr. Sujit, what do you think is the future then? At present, it is sounding like it is promising, though there are a few challenges in terms of demand. And but for a while, if we assume that we are able to generate demand either domestically or globally, how can we revolutionize this domain with the use of latest technology like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and language models, which Mr. Rajan also just referred to a while ago?
Yeah, Mr. Khanna, thank you very much for the question. What Mr. Vijayarajan had said about confidence, let me address that first. Today, we have a procedure which is called transcutaneous aortic valve replacement. And that is an aortic valve which is defective in the human body and is replaced by an artificial valve. And it can be done as you do an angioplasty. Now, the imported valves cost into the range of about 18 to 25 lakhs. Whereas the Indian valve, which is called My Valve, which is made by a company in Gujarat, in Vapi, costs between 13 to 14 lakhs. And we've started using that with fairly good results. Now, the overseas manufacturers, they have, started this new game by saying that we have 15 years data that nothing goes wrong with the valve. And in case of my valve, there is hardly any data because it's just 3 to 4 years old.
True.
So therefore, this is where the government has to counter. The government has to counter that by saying that 15 years later, we will have the data. But so far, the cases that we've done in this hospital show no difference in like-to-like comparison. So yes, of course, there are advantages of the new technologies that different companies have given. For example, retractable valves, that if you place it wrong once or you misfire a valve, you can retrieve it and use the same valve again. So those are a little bit in the future as far as my valve is concerned. Now you talk in terms of technology. Well, technology helps. For example, let me tell you, during COVID, we had an enormous problem trying to decipher patients with comorbidities if they needed some additional care. So we understood that and we did it, but we found, to our horrific surprise, that there were some patients who didn't have comorbidities and they landed up with severe problems, including death. So we approached, IT company in India, to create a software for us with artificial intelligence. And they wanted to know what is the endpoint. And we said the endpoint is death. Though it sounds a little macabre, but the endpoint is death, naturally. And from there, if we can work backwards. So they did, and they created a software for us. So therefore, patients, as soon as they entered, we started entering all their demographic details, etc. And we got a form of prediction that despite this patient not having unfavorable clinical situations or comorbids, you need to be extremely careful because they may be heading into trouble. So therefore, you were forewarned and you were forearmed. So therefore, surely technology can come in and help us. And even with machine learning, for example, today you have machines, for example, a cath lab, a very sophisticated cath lab, will give you the direction in an angiography as to which is the culprit artery. And you may find a triple vessel disease and you may be in a crisis situation, but it will tell you to hit this artery as opposed to that artery first. So therefore, just imagine the amount of time which is saved and the clinical scenario which is saved. So I certainly endorse the fact that technology can be brought into the realm of medical devices and can be used very, very safely, very effectively, and with a great degree of confidence that the Indian manufacturer can do. We use the Indian-made artificial intelligence software with great confidence.
Oh, that's very heartening to hear. In fact, it was when a medical professional says that like to like, we don't abstain from domestic. That itself speaks volumes. In fact, yes, I will come to you, Mr. Raj, very shortly. The main essence that the technology queries are coming. In fact, I can see some queries from the participants as well, or in and around that, because the new genre is wanting to know how this will bring down the cost. Like we were talking in terms of affordability. And Mr. Khanna spoke that, unless the healthcare is broad-based and it is within the reach, the technology per se does not excite. That is a supplementary, which I would love Bali to address as to, whether technology is all good in terms of precision, in terms of execution, in terms of all that high-end objectives. But am I, as a nation, able to make healthcare broad-based through this?
That's a very, very relevant question. Thank you so much for asking it. And somehow, Narayana Health has been, trying to solve this mystery for almost like, 23 years now, where we looked at affordability to be one of the most important component of the healthcare ecosystem. And this, of course, was coupled by delivering excellent clinical care, but still trying to make it affordable. Just to give an example, so we need to segregate, some of those fancy gadgets that we talk about that could become affordable in the future, and some of them which are very, very essential to solve our healthcare problem. One such machine that came into a scenario some years back was the proton, therapy, which the cost of treatment for an average patient is around 25 to 30 lakhs. And with one proton machine, you could buy approximately, 10 to 15 linear accelerators. And imagine India today has, 750 linear accelerators, and we today need another 700 linacs. When we look at a trade-off, especially for our country, where we see oncology to be growing at a 25% CAGR every year. We also see that patients coming at a third and fourth stage. So it becomes very. Also, we see that there are huge waiting times in government institutes for patients to get treated. So does it make sense for us to look at technologies which are very, very high-ended, very costly, although they provide that differential, treatment vis-a-vis, something which are much, much cheaper. The other part of the story is that we do around 18% of India's pediatric cardiac surgeries, and there have to be, in addition to technology, many other means which we need to employ if we really want to look at affordability. And so, I'm not going to go deep into it, what we did and how we try to do it, but I think it is very important for us to understand that for at least another 20, 30 years. Affordability is going to be very, very important for us in healthcare. I talk about it very often. We spoke about the out-of-pocket expenditure sometimes back, one of my panelists. And just to give an example to you, 18% is the average out-of-pocket expenditure across the world on average, whereas in India, it's close to around 58%. Maybe it has come down slightly. And I said earlier also, that we have around, 80 crore of Indians who are not covered by any insurance or any panel, etc., and who pay out of the pocket. Just to also give you a context correctly, we have around 7 lakh hospital beds today, and we need 30% more, which makes it 10 lakh beds. And let's take a theoretical value that 50% of this is cash paying patients who are not covered by any of the insurance. We are spending a whopping sum of around 120 crores every day out of pocket by our Indian, common normal people. So any technology that we look at, and now that we have started on a path towards looking at it from our perspective, every manufacturer, everybody who wants to do this or wants to create a magic, at least for next 20, 30 years, will have to look at technology which can deliver optimal healthcare. And I'm using the word optimal because, that's what is very, very important. So it is at a affordable cost because, as I said earlier, India's healthcare solutions are not in 140 crores of us some percentage, a high percentage of it going into hospital, but it lies in a very, very different way where many of us do not go to hospitals. In fact, what I would go one more step ahead and say that as this policy unveils, we cannot go on the traditional way of manufacturing what has already been manufactured. This is the age and era of many miniaturized devices. This is the age and era of wearables. This is the age and era of looking at medical devices itself in a very, very different manner. I wrote an article some days back of talking about hospitals which do not have any OPDs at all. Let us say in quaternary care or tertiary care hospitals. So let us talk about reducing OPDs by around 90%. That means many of these things which are being done when patients come to the hospital will be done at home. So, for us, as this policy unveils, we will have to look at manufacturing the devices in a futuristic manner. And I think there is where the demand-supply gap, which Dr. Sujit Chatterjee very rightly pointed out, right now we have an opportunity massive opportunity into, filling up that space right now, which, I feel is going to be very, very critical for our healthcare, not only for India, but I think this is a space where we can do a massive amount of work for abroad, because we've got outstanding talent as far as the, this part. I said around 8% of health tech workforce today is in India, and I think there's a great scope of expanding it much further. And then manufacturing devices of the future, which then become marketable in the world. Thank you.
Engrossing, excellent. Yes, Mr. Vijayarajan, you wanted to value add to the technology aspect that Dr. Sujit was referring to.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one statement. The healthcare business is the most information-intensive business. From the time you go to the doctor will ask you, what's wrong with you? What's the problem? You give information. So he asks for a lab report. You get additional information. He gives you medicine. He asks you, okay, how are you feeling now? So completely information-intensive business. And this is where this AI, ML, predictive analytics, all of them really help in putting these things together.
Right.
And if you're talking about imaging, okay, that's what you can't see through your normal eyes, the system can see. Because if you take an image, everything's there in the image. You're just a decipher. That's why the technology is. Okay.
Point taken.
Another cost-effective procedure perspective, today in rural health, like if they want some expert opinion, okay, if we can use the technology effectively, we can get the opinion from anywhere from the world. So we can reduce the cost for that patient who is sitting in a remote parts of the country and getting the best people supporting them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Khanna, can you, we were talking a while ago about the ecosystem, about this particular medical devices. We talked about everything in and around in terms of, the devices, their potential, their certification, etc., etc. But one aspect, that is the skill set, the skill manpower. Do you think that is in tandem with whatever the medical medtech technology and the requirement or the ask or the requirement that is there in the world? And if you do a little bit of crystal gazing, are we future ready in terms of skilled manpower? Is the short question.
I think we need many more people who are skilled in medtech, because what we have today are people who are from other fields who are joining medtech, but people trained in biomedical and aspiring for a career in medtech is not there. So I think the government's policy direction on setting up, increasing the skill force and setting up institutes to train people on medical device research and technology, I think it will help. The other thing which will really help, and this is a way how global R&D works, is that you will never have the right talent ever. But what happens is you start with what you have, you invest in people, you give them problems, and you start solving with smaller problem, which goes to a bigger problem, which goes to an even more complex problem. And that's how the capability of the team also develops in the lab and innovation. And similarly in the field of trials and so on and on. So I am actually pretty optimistic. And I think one of the statistics I want to just share with you is that, for every hospital bed, there is a direct employment of 5 to 7 people, depending on the occupancy, etc., etc. But there is an indirect employment of 30 people. So when you are talking about 10 lakh beds, which Commander Bali talked about, 10 lakh beds, you are talking about 3 crore jobs possible in this space. And 3 crores jobs without including the manufacturing, etc., which is devoted for global production. So I think this is something which the government needs to take note of, that this, apart from, of course, giving health to the citizens of the country and giving affordable health, quality health, it is also solving the economic problem of employment. and it will help that. And the more we help people get skilled in medical devices, the more it will help overall. So let me stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we had a fair, comprehensive and 360 approach to the subject. And I can see some queries that have come up from the participants as well. I will not be able to take all of them, but I'm sifting through and I find one query which I'm tempted to ask first, which says that are there any specific measures being taken to address potential counterfeit or substandard medical devices in the market, especially with the influx of online sales platforms? Now, Kavita Bali, would you like to give your view on that? Counterfeit and substandard medical devices.
Yes, sorry, I think I broke off. Okay, fine. So I think that's a very wonderful question. But I think to answer in a nutshell, you don't have counterfeit Boeing aircrafts or Airbuses. Neither you have counterfeit submarines, and neither you have a counterfeit robos or linear accelerators. So I think it's very, very difficult to manufacture counterfeit products which are high quality, which are, really, really are very difficult to manufacture. And there is always going to be a counterfeit market. I mean, you just cannot wish it away. It will be in many of the smaller products which are, manufactured in bulk, products which are, smaller, lesser in cost. So I think there would be enough checks and balances. And it also is very prudent for the organizations which buy products. If you're looking at products we bought at 1/10 the cost of a standard product in the market, of course, you're going to get a counterfeit product. I mean, you're not going to be on the journey. But you are very well aware, that if I'm going to buy a television from a market whose cost price is around 50,000 rupees, and as a television is also available for 8,000 rupees or 7,000 rupees, I can't be, buying at the best. I don't want to name any brand here, but buying a best brand at all. So I think the responsibility lies not only on the government to formulate rules and policies around counterfeits, where there are huge penalties, imposed, or you have, massive amount of, strictures imposed. I think the responsibility also lies on us as consumers to, when we look at products which are much cheaper than what market rates are, I think we're going to be in trouble. So I think it's a double responsibility in the sides. Yes.
Thank you. There is, yes, Mr. Khanna, you wanted to say something?
No, I'm just applauding Commander Bali's answer.
Okay, yeah, that was a very practical, down-to-earth response that you can't get cashew nuts for price of peanuts. Right. There is another query which also sounds interesting. It says that are there any initiatives or incentives in place to encourage medical device manufacturers to invest in research and development for innovative, cost-effective, and high-quality medical devices? I think I will have Mr. AVR give his view on this.
Yeah, initiative incentives for encourage.
R&D.
I think today, Department of Biotechnology has got quite a lot of initiatives to support entrepreneurs. You can be a single individual, apply for a grant for innovative products. And once your product reaches a certain level, there are subsequent grants are available. Our own company has actually benefited a lot by that. So there are incentives from the investment for innovative product. Now we also have schemes for giving some priority for India manufactured goods. Okay, what are the value addition done? Though it's not fully implemented, to a large extent, it's available, saying that there are a preference given to the India-made product. So such incentives are available. I think one of the concerns we always had from the people who are consumers is it safe to use? Again, okay, that's where actually I keep saying that there's a regulation is going to really help the entrepreneurs. You follow the regulation, deliver a safe product, that's good enough for you to have a market.
Yeah, Very true. I'll take one more or one or two more, and then maybe we will take summing up. The query is, what role can technology play in improving the transparency and traceability of medical devices throughout their life cycle, from the manufacturing to the usage to the disposal, the complete life cycle? Dr. Sujit, would you like to give your viewpoint on this?
I think it's a very important question. You know, you use devices, for example, why are we even talking about very sophisticated devices? Let's just look at a simple thing like a BP apparatus. Now, when you take a BP apparatus, you have to ensure that you have a traceability certificate. Now, the traceability certificate has to be given by an organization which itself is certified. So if you take the ISO, or you take any organization which indulges in quality of care, they are going to be looking at the traceability. So right from weighing machines to thermometers to BP apparatuses, you just have to have traceability certificates for all your medical equipment. You cannot have a medical equipment in a hospital where you don't have a check and a balance. For example, you need to have standardization. You need to have the standardization of the equipment as well as the traceability. And the traceability for the standardization can't be by any Tom, Dick, and Harry. It has to be by another certified organization. So, I mean, I think this is a fundamental requirement. You cannot have medical equipment which is not standardized, which doesn't have a quality assurance, and the quality assurance does not come with the traceability certificate. So the entire life cycle, for example, all companies tell you this is going to be end of life support. Now, it's your choice whether you want to use that equipment after the end of life support, but they've clearly told you this is the end of life support. So now you want to take a chance, you go ahead, you go right ahead. And that's where there is so much of obsolescence as far as the medical industry is concerned, because once you reach the end of life care or the end of life support, you will find you need to purchase a new machine. Now, that's all because of the safety factor. So to say that, is there anything as regards traceability? I think I do not know of any hospital that does not have a traceability certificate for all their medical equipment. I really haven't heard of one.
Mr. Khanna, would you like to give your point of view on this transferability and traceability, as from the point of view of its actual implementability in the country? How far is it getting implemented in the country?
So I agree with Dr. Chatterjee, what he just mentioned. An additional point I'd like to make is that, see, technology is currently already doing that. See, many of the equipments which are being serviced, their service records are with the company, and companies remotely monitoring and managing those devices even today. So they know that I'm in Bombay, but they know sitting in Bangalore or elsewhere, and what is happening. So technology is already monitoring that. And if you go back, you actually, with the certifications, you know when each product is manufactured. Actually, whenever the product is manufactured, everything is tracked. It is not that even that nail which is put, or even a small piece which will be put in a pacemaker or whatever, everything is tracked. So there is no issue of not traceability. So the only way technology can help is it will digitize all records. And I don't know, maybe someday blockchain will say, okay, device number 3 made by manufacturer number A on so and so time. So then it is a unique, like a fingerprint, which nobody can touch, and that you can track the whole life. So that's the only change which can happen. Rest, I think, is happening already.
Okay, and that's great. So yes,
So
Mr. Evia, you wanted.
one of the regulatory requirement is this. Okay, a product is certified by CE, which means every piece of that product has got a device history record, is with a manufacturer. Like what Khanna was saying about which screw has been used. This screw was bought with this batch. So this screw has gone bad at the Hinduja hospital. Okay, how many more devices were made using that type of screw? Okay, will I be in a position to trace all of them and if necessary, bring back or do some corrective action? So that is where the regulatory plays a critical role. You need to have a traceability. Now there's one more thing is coming up in Europe is actually unique device identification. Okay, that's being implemented probably by 2027. I think they said that it'll be completely implemented, and probably India also is going to do that. So by scanning, you should get to know complete detail. I think, like Khanna said, a blockchain type of stuff can be really useful in that.
That's great. That's great. So there are a few more questions, but I think they are kind of overlapping, and we have addressed them in some way or the other. I will not like to take them separately. In all, I mean, I would like to mention that in the entire deliberation that we had, we took up really the evolution of the medical device regulation right from the day of Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940, which Mr. Khanna talked about, and said that this particular segment of medical devices has actually got some cognizance only of late, and that it got kind of defined under drugs for a very long time, good 4 decades. And sometime in 83, the first major step was taken to actually have a cognizance of medical devices as drugs and have a kind of legislation to it. Thereafter, one after another, there were regulations that followed. So he had very nicely mentioned that this is a conservative, and unless there is a ROI to the investments, manufacturer confidence would be kind of shaky and not be well founded. And of course, and then we listened to Commander Bali, who meant that that cost of health has to be necessarily broad-based, and the kind of investment that we are making in medtech is minimal, and there is tremendous potential. And this particular MDR does have a grand vision, and he talked about that this high-end machineries, like he referred to proton machines, while they may sound very fancy, if they are beyond the reach of the common mass, or even not common mass, even the median population, then I think it remains as a dream which has not come true. So this optimal healthcare is something that he definitely had a lot to underscore. And Mr. Rajan, he definitely has brought in the aspect of safe product and the performance, which is now a major aspect of the MDR in terms of its evaluation in the post-market period. So I was, in fact, it was music to my ear, which I mentioned a while ago also when he said regulator is a friend, but he had some concerns about certification, but he has great hope on the new age products. And so as a medtech provider, that augurs really well for the country. And of course, at the end, he also mentioned about UDI, which he says will make its inroads and footsteps in the country also in 27 or thereabouts. So very promising. Dr. Sujit, you had brought in the aspect of this, whether the chicken or the egg, the supply versus the demand enigma. There is definitely a impetus required for the domestic producers, unless they find a ready market. And without a ready market, without the established demand, their investment in healthcare will always be with an if and but. So that was wonderful. So I completely agree that this entire discussion has happened in a very, very comprehensive manner, covering major aspects of the subject, and the queries from the participants definitely has given me the insight that they are into healthcare in a very, very big way in terms of their insight, understanding, and they must have been engrossed throughout the session. Otherwise, such queries cannot be asked. So this is wonderful. And GIMS, which is the Global Information and Management Symposium, which is organizing this online session, and they have taken on to them to organize a series of such kind of online sessions on various critical and impactful subjects from different verticals of the economy, be it the healthcare, be it the information technology, be it the BFSI, be it the real estate, and you name it. So this is what is going to culminate into GIMS Health 1.0 symposium in Dubai in mid-December, around 15th December, in which they will give a crucible for cross-pollination of ideas and do a crystal gazing as to how this particular healthcare in general and with much broader subject will emerge in not only in the country, but globally. Thank you very much. It was great having all of you. You have been wonderful. And the participants have been very, very impactful by virtue of the queries that we could see. And I thank you all for having made it. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.